Okay, I will be sending the link. That's the meeting link for the backend guys. The instructor just shared it with me now. So I'll be sending the link for the backend guys so that they can join. And if they're still in the call, they can join and have their own class over there. Okay. So if you're doing backend, or if you choose backend and you want to continue with the backend, so use this Google Meet call as a Google link, and use the link and join the backend class. I believe they should have started by now. All right, so let's get started with what we'll have for today's session. Okay, so today we are looking at we're still on week 5, and so today this is section 2. I mean, so section 2 rather. Sorry for that. Okay. So section 2, and what we're looking at today is CSS basics. On Monday, we treated our HTML and all that. So today we are going to look at CSS basics and what really CSS does for us when we are working or building a web application, web app, website, whatever that you will have, right? And if you have any question during the class, within the class, please make sure you put it down on the chat bot or chat box so that it will be attended to, or if something that requires you to talk, you can indicate by raising your hand. Okay. All right. So let's get straight to what we have. So our today's agenda, we'll be looking at how CSS works, right? CSS selectors, the foundation of CSS, and all that. Styling properties, box model, and CSS positioning. So these are what we're going to be looking at as our agenda for today. So let's get straight away. Um, how CSS works. First of all, we need to know what CSS is actually. We need to know what CSS is. Yeah, I will get that after. I will share that after after the I will get that after the call, but it's after the class. All right. So CSS basically it's let's just say it's a programming language, because everything we are doing here is programming. So CSS is a programming language that helps us to style, give color, change the appearance, change how our web page, web application looks, how the typography, that's the font, how colorful they look, where they are located, and all those stuff. So when we were dealing with HTML, we were only seeing the structure, the building block of our application. But when we are working with CSS, we are trying to give it color. Is this going to be red? Is this going to be green? Is it going to be black? And so forth. How big is this element going to be? Where is it going to be located? So these are what CSS does for us. So what CSS actually does is CSS controls the visual appearance of our HTML elements, right? By applying styles like colors, layout, spacing, and typography. That's basically what CSS does for us, right? Then CSS cascade, because the full meaning of CSS means cascading style sheet. Cascading style sheet. If you watch here at the top of my slide, you see I have it, cascading style sheet. And what cascading does is cascading. The cascade means which CSS rules when multiple rules target the same element based on order, specificity, and importance. So what this means is, let's say we want to style, because when we are building an application, we are going to be styling each element that we are working on. When we have a page, when we have different elements, when I mean element, I mean HTML element. When we have different HTML elements like H1, paragraph, list, and all that, when we want to style them, we are going to be picking each of it. We're going to be picking each of it to style. We're not going to style everything once. We're going to pick H1 and style. After styling H1, we leave it. We pick another element and style. That's basically what happens. So what CSS here does is, when you have an element that is having two styles, which mostly happens. It mostly happens because at times you would think you haven't styled an element, and you come back to restyle it, and you don't know that you've already styled it previously. So what happens is, the last time that you are giving to your that element is the style that is going to affect that element. That's what cascading means. It's more like it's overshadowing the previous style that you've already given to that element. Okay. So understanding specificity. So specificity here means which style affect or is going to apply on an element. When we have this, when in our next subsequent slide, we'll be seeing ways to apply styles, but we really want to know, there's some rules, there's some standards that we should know, and that tells us when we have some certain styles, there's some that is going to apply more than others, right? For example, when we have a class, so we're going to see all this. A class is going to apply more than an element and all those stuff, right? So also we're going to be looking at internal versus external versus inline CSS, right? So let's check the next slide and see what we have. So we have over here our CSS selectors. So I'm going to open my code editor over here and walk through what we have. So if you check on my right side, the screenshot I have on my right side of my slide, you see that the selectors we have there are more like how we'll pick each element from HTML and then style them in CSS. That's basically what we mean by CSS selectors. How we pick those elements from HTML and then we style them in CSS, right? So I'm going to, okay, let me explain this before I now go straight to my code editor. So starting for an instance, we'll have element selector. So what element selector does there is, element selector targets all HTML elements of a specific type, like the paragraph type, like the p tag that we have there, and style them. So okay, let me show this on my code editor, because I think it will make more sense than talking about this all the time. So I'm going to open my code editor here, and I believe you can still see my screen. Please, if you can still see my screen, let me say thumbs up so that I know that I'm not alone. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so yesterday I made mention about downloading an extension, and I believe that if you were here yesterday, if you were part of the class yesterday, that we downloaded that extension, it's going to help us to run our application so that we see the visual output of our application. That's the most important thing about front-end development, so that you see what you're doing, right? Okay, so over here, um, okay, I'm creating this outside, although I've already made some, okay, let me say basic.css. So for C, yeah, question, go ahead.
Sorry, please. You see, what are the extensions you asked us to download, please?
Okay, for the extension that we need to run the files so that they can come on the browser is Lifesaver. So when you go to your extension tabs, you search for Lifesaver. So this is how it looks like. Let it load. This is how it looks like. If you can see my screen, download Lifesaver. So what Lifesaver does for you is when you right click your HTML file, it only works on HTML file alone. It doesn't work on CSS. When you download it and install it, you right click on your HTML file and then you select the option of open with Lifesaver. So it's going to open your application or your page, that current page you're working on your browser, so that you see the output of what you are dealing with. There are other extensions that you can download like Prettier. Prettier helps you to format your code and make it more readable for you instead of having scattered code when you're writing. It helps you to format your code. There are a lot of um, extensions. Maybe I will give a list of that after the class. Okay, so back to the class. I'm here in my so to create our CSS file, excuse me, to create a CSS file, you give your CSS file a name. To create a CSS file, you give your CSS file a name and then give it an extension. What I mean by extension is this the dot after the dot, what comes after the dot, that's what I mean by the file extension. So give it the file extension of .css. So in HTML we give it .html, in CSS we're giving it .css, right? So I've created this basic .css file. All right, so I'm going to create this I'm creating this index.html file, which is nothing in it, right? So I'm going to create or start our scaffold or template um, scaffold for HTML. And how we do that is when we start typing HTML, we select 5 so that we use the HTML5 template to work on or to build our application. So we treated all this yesterday. So inside here, I'm going to just give my H1 and say um, this is the class of CSS, right? Let me leave it this way. So this is the class of CSS. So if let me change this title to CSS basics. Okay, so if I right click on this my HTML file now inside of the HTML because I want to see the output of this HTML on my browser. I've already downloaded the Summer Lifesaver. So if I right click here and scroll down, I'm going to say open with Lifesaver. So I'm going to open this file with my Lifesaver and I'm going to see that this is the class of CSS over here. So now what we're going to do is style this CSS, style this HTML file so that we can apply some CSS styles to it. Remember, we are still looking at the selectors, CSS selectors. So we're bringing in HTML and CSS together so that we can have a better understanding of how things works, right? So back to my code editor here. I'm going to, first of all, we have, before we start styling, we need to know that there are three different ways that we can, there are three different ways which we can style or we can connect our CSS. Yeah, we can connect our CSS with our HTML file. So the first way is using external CSS. So external CSS is when you have a CSS file that is living outside of your HTML file, totally outside. The CSS file is not going to, the CSS code are not going to be inside of your HTML. You don't, inside here, you are not going to see any HTML, you're not going to see any CSS code. So all the CSS code are going to be inside of this CSS file. This is the external CSS that we have. And what we do, how we link it is by using the link tag. And we use that or we do that inside of the head tag. Remember yesterday when I was explaining about what this tag does, I said that the head tag contains more information that the head tag contains more information that the excuse me, the head tag contains more information which your application is going to have, right? So that's what the head tag does. So I'm going to link my CSS now. Once I start typing link, I'm going to have the options to select what kind of file do I want to link. So I have Atom, I have CSS, I have other things. So I want to link my CSS, right? So I'm going to select CSS. And when I select CSS, I'm going to have attributes of two attributes inside of that link. So the first one is rel, which is more like saying what's the relationship between this file that I'm working with, this HTML file that I'm working with, and the file that I want to link here. So the relationship here is that the style I want to link is a style sheet, which means it's a CSS file. That's basically what it means. Because you can link other things. Remember when we start typing link, we got other options like atom, icon, and all those stuff. So for here, the relationship that we have there is style sheet. Then we have href. So the href here is saying what or where is this file located? So this file that we are trying to link, where is it located? And what is the name, right? So that's what this href here does. So the href here, we are going to give it the exact name of the CSS file that we want to work with. What we are dealing with here now is external CSS. So I'm giving that as a comment, external CSS or external styling, right? So I'm going to change this my style.css to have the same name as basic.css so that it can reference to that file. Because if I don't have that basic.css, it will be looking in my code base to see where I have style.css, and there's no place I have style.css over here. So I will really, all the styles that I will be putting inside this, my HTML will not work, right? So I'm going to change this to basic.css. So any style now that I apply or that I that I write in my basic.css is now going to work on my HTML. So let's try that out. I'm going to split my screen. And so that I can have on my left, I have my browser, and on my right, I have my code editor. Okay, so over here, I have my HTML file, and then on my left, I have my browser. Okay, so here now, I have my HTML. Currently, I'm in my CSS. So I want to change this color. Yeah, I want to change this color. I want to change the color of this text to something else instead of having the black color here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now use the selector, because what we are interested in is knowing selectors. And selectors are a way of getting the elements that we have in our HTML to use it to style the CSS. That's basically what selectors does for us. So I'm going to, in my HTML here, the element that I have here is H1, right? So I'm going to select H1 here. I'm going to come over here and do H1, and then I will style this. Then I can say color, and I'll say red, right? So if I save, immediately the color changes on my browser. Immediately the color changes on my browser. So as I'm saving the file, the changes is taking effect immediately on my browser. So that's one advantage of live server. So without live server, you'll be the one manually refreshing your page to see how the effect worked or has it not worked and all those stuff, right? So That is for one, our external CSS. So what we did here was we created our HTML file. So back to my code editor, we created our HTML file, which is everything I believe everyone should be able to do now. And then we added an element which we treated yesterday, on Monday rather. We added an element and then we linked the CSS. Remember, if you don't link the CSS, there's no magic that you will do that will make this to work. There's no magic. You have to link the CSS and tell the CSS that, okay, this is the file that I want you to listen to, recognize what is being done there, and then do whatever thing that you have to do, right? So after linking the CSS, then you now pick the elements that you want to style. So the elements that we want to style is H1, and we are picking it by calling the H1 and then giving it some colors that we have here, right? So that's for our external CSS. So let's look at other type of styling that we can do. So currently what we just did now is in external CSS. We can equally have, so I'm going to comment out this, and if I comment it out and save this file, you will see that this turns back to black color because we've commented out. So this commenting out is more like deactivating the effect of this link, telling this code now, okay, this is not really a code now. This is more like a comment. This is a hint that we are saying this is something that is happening here. We're not really saying that this is what's happening, right? So I've commented this out, and now we want to use another way of styling, which is called the internal styling, right? So I'm going to do the internal styling above the element that I want to do. It's not more that you must do it above the element, but it's easier for you to do it above the element so that you can be able to see those ties that you are doing, right? So I'm going to start my internal internal styling over here, right? So, and to do my internal styling, I'm going to use the style tag. I'm going to use the style tag. So all my styling that I'm doing internally, I'm going to do them inside of this style tag that I have here, right? So to do this, it's still the same way. It's still the same thing that we did in our external styling that we're going to do here. Just that here, we are doing it inside of the HTML file. That is just the only difference here. So I'm going to pick my H1 and give it my color and say, let me give it another color so that it won't be like we are bringing back the red. So I'm going to give it teal. Teal is more like a green color, right? So I have teal here. So once I save, the color changes over here as well. So this is our internal styling. So here now, you can do any, you can style any element you want to style internally. You can style any element you want to style externally, depends on what you want. But it's mostly encouraged and it's mostly advised that you style your application externally. Why? Because when someone comes to your code, for instance, if I open this code now on my browser, I'm not only going to see this my HTML, I'm equally going to see this my CSS. So this is what I mean. Let me open this. So if I inspect and go to my elements over here, so I'm going to see the body. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay, I can't zoom in. Let me check. Okay, yeah. So if I zoom in here, you can see that inside of the body, I have this style. I have this style. Meanwhile, this is not meant to be when you have external CSS. And from here, hackers can manipulate what you have on your browser, on your application, and gain access to whatever thing that they want to gain, right? It's not advisable that you use internal CSS. It's very, very okay that you use external CSS, all right? So that's for security reasons. All right, so the last approach we're going to use in styling our application is using inline CSS. So what we've done here is internal CSS. So I'm commenting this out so that my code returns back to the black color. So I'm commenting this and I'm going to do my inline CSS. So inline styling. And what inline styling does for us is inline styling, we are going to be writing CSS right inside the elements that we want to style. Okay, so let's see how it works. So inside my H1, I'm going to come here and do style, right? So this time now, I'm not going to do my color and then maybe give this a blue color, right? So I have it. So inside of my elements, inside the element I'm working on, that's where I'm basically giving the style that I want to use, right? So it depends on what you are dealing with. It depends on how big that you want the site to look. You can choose to go with any of this. And most importantly, you can use as you can use any of the options. You can leave the options, right? But for the start, I always advise you go with external. But when you enter React, React is more like using inline CSS, right? You're going to be adding your JavaScript, your CSS, and all those stuff all together. All right. Okay, so back to our slide so that we continue what we have. And if you have questions, please feel free to drop on the comment section, right? Yeah, square.
Sorry, please. My question is I don't even know where to even start, so I can't be typing. So I'm a little bit lost. Now the place I'm lost is first, how do I run the live server? I've written the code, but I don't actually know where to click to run what I wrote.
Okay. Okay, so you have your HTML file, right? And you have the templates of the code itself. Okay, so what you do is make sure that the file is saved. You can write some simple HTML tag inside, maybe let's say paragraph, and can write hello world. I think that's the first thing we write. Hello world. Then um and you right click inside of the HTML file, right? Inside of the HTML file, you right click. When you right click, I believe you're following my direction now. That's what I'm doing. So you right click, and if you scroll down, you can see open with live server. If you have the live server installed, you will see the options there. Open with live server. So if you click on it, it's going to open on your browser. So I don't know if that happens on your side. Did you get the same thing?
I have the live server installed, but I'm not seeing open with live server. Maybe I
Oh,
don't know where I did
did
something.
you scroll down? Did you when the options when you right click?
My options are not even as much as yours, so there's nothing to even scroll down to.
Okay. Okay, another way to go about it is to come to your file explorer, that is still on your code editor, your file explorer.
Okay.
If the extension is downloaded, it should give you the options of that open with live server. If the extension downloaded really. So when you come to the file explorer, you right click. It's still the same way of open with live server. That should even be the first thing that you should see when you right click on index on HTML. Don't right click on CSS. It doesn't work on CSS. It only works on HTML. Okay. So right click on index any name that you give it to your HTML file. So right click on it, and that should be the first that you will see when you right click on the file. You see that? If others in the call, if you have been able to open your live server, please can you drop on the chat? I have. Let's know. Let's know. That is too late to say. If you've been able to okay, yeah. Okay, great. Great. Awesome. So I think what you will do is try. I believe maybe your server have not installed. Maybe if it's uninstalled, uninstall it
Ah,
and install it again.
sir, I feel he
No.
uses a Windows operating system. So if you should check his the bottom part of his screen, he should see something like go live. You should just click the button
Oh,
and it will open. You're using a
okay. Yeah.
Linux operating system, so he uses a Windows.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm using Linux, but it doesn't. Yeah. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. It's still there on my own. It's still there on my own. If I click on go live, it will still go live. But I prefer using right click so that others can see the way. I can't say it. Noble,
Sorry,
noble,
please.
noble.
Let me
Link
let me just show you something. If you can see what I'm showing you, I'm not sharing screen, but I'm just turning my camera.
okay. Noble, I don't know if you can hear me. I believe others can hear
Can you
me,
see my
but
camera?
if you can't hear me, try. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, this live server, as you can see, is showing uninstalled, which shows that is installed, right? Network. Okay,
Uh-huh.
let me see.
Then go to your index, go to your HTML file.
Long time. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so now look at this now. Upon coming here, coming back here now. Anyway. So if I right click, look at the options it's showing me. Nothing like open with live server. Now this
Um.
I'm in the HTML file now.
Okay.
Okay, okay,
Check your
I
bottom
think I know the
right.
reason right now.
Check your bottom right. If you see something like go live, yes, go live. Have you
Okay,
seen
it's not
something
there. I
like
Just
that?
think
share your
this
screen.
is the
Share
reason.
your screen. Let's
I
see
did
what
not
it's
put.
showing you.
Okay, I think I know the reason now. I did not put .html. Like I think that's the reason. That could be right.
Yeah. Put dot HTML. Put dot HTML because it only recognizes HTML.
I think that's the reason. Okay, I think I get it right now. Okay, yeah, I'll do that now. How do I? It's not renaming. How do I rename it now?
Just then go to the file name, right? Click on the file name on your over here. You can see my screen. You
The
can see my
screen.
screen. Go to this section. Go to the file explorer.
File Explorer.
That is no top at the top. As if you want to create a new file.
Okay, file.
No. How will I put it?
Because this is the Explorer right now.
Click. There's a place that you see something like files, an image of a file. Click on it. It will take you to where your existing files are. No, come down a bit. No, not there. Not there.
Not
Not
that.
there.
It's not that place.
The above that search icon, the icon above the search icon.
Here.
Yes. Click on it again.
That's
Then
all it's doing.
click. No, click on it again. You will see when it opens. When it opens, um, the first, I think your folder is collapsed. When it opens, okay, just try creating a new file. Create a new file and do everything from afresh so that we can save our time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so continuing, we've been able to establish the different ways that we can link our styles to our HTML. So we want to now look at um, want to look at CSS selectors. So selectors there, like I was saying, is way that we pick the way that we style our elements, right? How do we select the elements? How do we select different part of our code that is in HTML that we want to style and bring it inside of our CSS? That's basically what selectors there means, right? So we've been able to look at element selector. So element selector is when we pick the elements itself. So elements here can be like paragraph, it can be like H1, it can be like image, it can be like div, all those stuff. So when you pick the element itself, like we have P here, and on my code screenshot, I have P. So when you pick P, you are dealing with the element itself, right? We have class selector. So what class selector does is class selector select all elements that share a class name, allowing reusable styling. So I know I didn't do class in our last class, right? In our last session, I need to say. So what class means, or how we can give a class to an element is a class. Let me comment on this. So let me work on this hello world. A class is an attribute. Attributes are more like other parameters that we can have inside of a tag, inside of the opening tag of an element, right? So we can have class here. So this class is more like an identity, more like something that you can use to recognize that this paragraph belongs to a particular set of people. That's why it's basically called class. So you can say that, okay, this is um let's use an analogy of a school system. So this is first class students, right? So you can have another P. I can say this is second class, right? And you come to the class and you can say that this is second. Okay, let me use second here, right? So over here you say first. So this class that we have is more like saying this is some groupings that we are trying to give these elements that they belong to some certain groups, right? Then we can equally have another parameter or attribute inside of an element called an ID. Okay, so ID here is more like a unique identifier for that element. So an ID here can be like your surname as a human being. That's basically what an ID does here. So an ID is representing this element is unique. It doesn't share this ID with any other person. This ID belongs to him or to it or to her, right? That's basically what ID does. But for class, class is more like some groupings of some set of elements that say, okay, these are what we belong to. So these are our class. So for ID is going to be unique. So we can say that an ID, the naming convention that you can use any naming convention, but definitely use what denotes or what relates to what you are dealing with. Okay, so I'm going to say that this is let's say um, paragraph. I'm just going to give this paragraph, right? So if I want to style these elements now, excuse me, if I want to style these elements, the first paragraph that I have, I can choose to style it using the class, or I can choose to style it using the ID, right? And these are what we are equally going to see with time. Okay, so if I come to my CSS, so let me go back to my code here. So if I come to my CSS and I pick my class, and how do we now style class? The name of the class that we have here is called first. So we want to style this first element. We want to style this hello world using the class first. So what we are going to do is normally what we did initially was to select the element by its element name, but now we're going to use the class. And when we do first and maybe do let's say color, let me still use color because so that we can see the differences. It's like color yellow. This won't work. Why? Because first is not the name of an element. If the name of an element was first, this will work. But since we are dealing with a class, we are going to append or put before that class a dot before it. So the dot is going to say that, okay, this is a class. And if I save this now, I should get a yellow, right? Let me save and refresh and open with live server. So if I save this, open with live server, hello what? Okay. I commented this. I commented the external style. Yeah. Okay. So what happens there is I gave. Let me use green. Okay. So I gave this elements here. I gave this my first paragraph here a class that is called first. And then for me to style that element, I'm going to use dot first to style it. I'm not going to just come and call first and it will work. No, I must first of all add dot to it to show that this is a class that I want to style. So let me give a comment here and says class, then elements. Okay. Then the next thing we are going to look at, still under our CSS, we're going to look at ID, which I just finished explaining now. So for ID, we use hashtag for ID to specify that this is a unique identifier for this element, right? So I'm going to go back to my element, and the element, the element I want to style is I want to style this paragraph. Okay. So the ID that I have here is called paragraph. So I'm going to come back to my CSS and do hashtag, then paragraph, then open bracket, open curly braces. That's the way it's being done. You open the curly braces, then you write what you want to apply on the element. So I'm going to do my font size, or let me say font weight, and make it bold. So it's becoming bold. Then I can change the font family to cursive. Okay, it won't work. So let me change the font family to something else. Okay, fantasy. Oh, why don't it work? Okay, since it's not working, but basically, okay, let me do something simple. Yeah, I'm going to do my border. Okay. Okay, so all this thing I'm doing, we're still going to learn about them. I'm just trying to do some stops. All right. Okay, so I used the ID here to style this element, and I use the class here to style this element, right? So the other CSS selectors that we can see is a universal selector. So what universal selector does for us is this is the way that we make use of the universal selector. And anything that we put in here is going to apply all over our application. Yeah, Rejoice. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, sir. I
Yeah.
noticed the paragraph in the CSS styling, you use hash instead of dots. Why didn't you use dots for the paragraph?
Okay. So that's a good question. So I'm going to split my screen here, bring this my HTML. So on my left, I have my HTML. On my right, I have my CSS. So pay attention, please. The element I'm styling is this. You can see that, right? So on it, I have two attributes. The first attribute I have is class, and then the second attribute I have is ID. So the convention or how it is being done is when you want to style an element using the class selector. So the class selector is you want to pick that element by referencing that element based on its class name. That is based on this space that we have there. That's the class name. We use dot before the class name. But if we want to style that element based on the ID, we use hashtag. That's just the convention. Did I answer your question?
Okay, I understand.
Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, all right. So going forward, we are looking at universal selector. So what universal selector does for us is universal selector enables us to type everything in that web page that we are dealing with. So let's say, for instance, over here, I'm going to add a lot of elements here now. I'm going to add I'm going to add H1. I'm going to add a lot. Let's say heading one. I'm going to add a lot of stuff. So add paragraph and say Lauren Gibson. Right. So okay, because of time, H2. So H2, I'm going to say this is heading two, right? So okay, let me just leave it here. So if I want to add style to everything that I have on this particular web page now, I can use this universal selector, right? So universal selector applies or selects every element that we have. It's going to select everything that we have there when you're styling. So if I come here and I say color, and I say color to be, what color should we use? What color should we use? Let's say color to the purple, right? So you can see, aside from the red that this heading one is having, and okay, let me just comment all these colors that we'll have. Let me comment during comment heading. So universal selector selects everything. Currently, what we are looking at, we're not looking at the color or kind of styles we are dealing. We're currently looking at how to select elements. That's why I commented this ones so that we can know that okay, we're selecting this element, we're selecting this element, we're selecting this element. So currently I selected all the elements, and that's why I was able to get the purple to work on every one of them, right? So that's for universal selector. We are not selecting by paragraph, we didn't select by class, we didn't select by elements. We selected everything inside the application, and then we got the purple. Okay, so and lastly, we are going to have attribute selector. So attribute selector basically works with when you want to pick an element that has a unique attribute. So remember I said that these are attributes. Class is an attribute, ID is an attribute. So we want to pick and add an element that has a unique attribute, right? So instead of, maybe you don't want to use the class, you don't want to use ID, you don't want to use universal selector, you want to pick an element, you want to identify a unique an element using its unique attributes. So for instance, I'm going to use my input elements here and type. I'm going to say text and placeholder. We did this list on Monday and say Sunday, right? So yeah, I have it here. So I want to select this input element, and I want to maybe add a border to it. The border makes sense. Okay, let me just let me try. I want to select this input element and do something to it, right? So currently now, I don't have the type. I don't have any class on this. I don't have any ID on this. So what I can do is I can select this attributes type that I have there, right? If I go to my CSS, I can say with what I have on my code here, I can say type, I can say input, okay, inputs, then type, blah, blah, blah. So I can say input, then type equal to text, then put whatever I want to put. So I can put background color, let's say gray, if that works. Yeah, works. So text, um, yeah, color white. So when I type, my color is white and the background is gray. So what I did here was I selected the element by getting the inputs. Now, remember, what I did here was, first of all, I got the elements, which you can still get, but after getting the elements, I was specific enough to ensure that I'm only selecting the input element with the type of text. So I don't want to select because when you are building your application, you'll be having a lot of input elements. You can only have surname alone. You definitely have first name, surname, other name, date of birth, all those stuffs, right? So I'm only selecting the type of text and I'm giving it this particular um, tag. And this is our attribute selector. Okay. Okay. So good. Any question? If you're with me, can I get a thumbs up so that I know I'm not alone? If you're with me, can I get a thumbs up? Okay, thanks. Yeah. All right. So we are going straight to the next thing that we have. So far we've been able to identify or know how to get the elements that we have in our HTML. Remember, first of all, we learn how to fix or how to link our CSS with our HTML. So currently, we've learned how to get those elements that we can have in our HTML file and connect it with our CSS. So currently, the next thing we should be learning is now how to now style, how to now style. So what really um okay, what really are we going to be styling? Because all the while we've been looking at getting elements, and I've been using my own knowledge of the CSS styling that I know. And some people will be asking, what's it doing? What's it doing? What's it doing? So, but now we're going to look at, okay, what's really happening here? How do we do this? How do we do this? But before we go on, let me go back to this. So here, I'm going to use this to explain what is happening. So this is the structure of a CSS statement. If you can see my slide here, this is a structure of a CSS statement. And what happens here, we have our selector, which we just treated now, the element that we're grabbing from HTML over to CSS, right? Then we have after this selector, after we selected an element, we are now going to declare the style that we want to give to that element. So the declaration is more like saying, what do you want what effect do you want this element to have, aside from what it's already having on the, or aside from what is already having when you take it in HTML, right? So it's going to have, here, by saying we want the color to be blue. So the color here is a property that we have for this element. And then what is the value of that color that we have? And we are saying that the value that we want to give to this property is blue. Then we have another property, font size. And we're saying what font size do we want to use for this H1? Then the value is saying, okay, I want 12 pixel. That px there means pixel. I want 12 pixel to be the value of this font size, right? So that's basically how it works. You have a selector, then you have a declaration. So the declaration there is not like saying, okay, this is what I really want to do today. So you bought a car, and let's say you bought a car and you want to furnish. Okay, let's say you bought a house. Let's say you rent a house. Let me say the house. You rent a house and you want to furnish it. So you now come inside and say, okay, I need to buy a fan. What type of fan, what color of fan do I need to buy to put it in my house? And I after figuring that out, you say I need a fridge or deep freezer. What kind of deep freezer? Do I need something big? Do I need something small? I need an air conditioner. What kind? Like I need light. Okay, so that's basically how it works with CSS. Remember, CSS is about styling, beautifying your elements and all this stuff, right? So back to our styling properties. Now, we've known the property, we've known how to select the elements. So it's now time to know these properties itself. So the properties here are more like colors, font styling, width and height, margin and padding, border radius, background images, and yada, other sorts, right? There are a whole lot of them, but we're going to focus on the basic ones that you need to know. Other ones you can browse and make researches and all those stuff. But these are basically the major ones that you need to know, right? So first of all, we need to know about colors. Very, very important. And the colors that we have different ways of specifying colors. We can specify colors by name, like I've always done. If you watch my screenshot that I have here, you will see that on my box one that I have color. Then after the color, I have red. So the red there is the name of the color that I'm specifying that this box one should have. But there are times that the color that you want to use does not have a name, right? The color you want to use does not have a name. Maybe you want something gray in color. You want something grayish in color, but not exactly gray. So there's no color name that is something like something gray or or orange like, right? Tomato like. There's nothing like that. So this is where you now have to use hex code. So hex code is a combination of some hexadecimal numbers which contains alphabet and numbers. And those hexadecimal numbers are they have their different sections that their numbers represent colors. You don't need to memorize them. What you just need to know is you can browse online and look at and say, this is the color I'm looking for. Can I get the decimal color code or exact hex number of it? And definitely you get it. Then the other one we can get is the RGB. RGB simply means red and blue. It's a combination of red, green, and blue. That's the primary color that you are going to deal with whenever you're doing whether design, styling, anything at all, filming, whatever. So you need to know, okay, I want 50% of red, 50% of 150 or okay degrees of gray, 200 degrees of blue, and it will give you a combination of a color, right? That's basically what happens. So that's for color. So we have three ways or more. I think we have four ways. We have another one, but let's leave it for that. So we have three ways, three primary ways that you can specify for color, the name, the hex, and the RGB, right? So we're still going to look at this few moments from now. So we have font style. So font properties control how text looks, including style, including size, weight, size, and style rather, and family. So when you are working with font is going to give you different options: font family, font weight, font size, font style, and all that. And that is what I have on my next screen on the screenshots below here. So you're going to see a lot of things. Yeah, that's that. So font style, you can have font style to the italics, you can have it to the bold, you can have it to the underline. It's not like some natural things, some common things that you always see in font, strike through, um, underline, all those stuffs, right? So we're going to look at those. Then we have, yeah, Pascal, go ahead.
Sorry, sir. Can you zoom a little bit on the screenshot?
Pardon?
Can you zoom in a little bit on the screenshot?
I'm presenting slide. I don't think it can zoom in, but don't worry, I will share the slide after.
Okay,
And
sir.
we're going to see, probably going to see the hands-on exercise. So if you don't see it, just the minutes you see it when I start doing it on my coding. All right. So we have width and height. So this sets the size of an element box on the page, right? So we have margin, padding. So we'll get to all this border radius. So these are properties that we can have in our code. Yeah, we can have in our code, in our styling, when styling our CSS or when styling our elements rather. So I'm going to go straight to my code editor because okay, so okay, so and hello, can you hear me? If you can hear me, please, can I see a thumbs up? You can hear me. Okay, thank you. Rejoice, you have a question? Go ahead.
Okay, sir, I want to understand something. Before you style any um either the paragraph, like for instance now the paragraph you put hash, for the text you put the other one you put dot, then you put first, then for the headings you put asterisk, something like that. So does it mean that anytime you want to the style the heading, you're going to put those signs? Can you use
No,
hash for heading? Can you use hash for another? Let me say you want to use hash for paragraph. Can you also use that hash for the heading?
yeah, yeah, yes, yes. So CSS there is you are at your um you are at your own do it yourself. Like you have your choice. You can choose to do anything in CSS. There's no rule in CSS, right? There's no, let's say, standard you must. There's no conventional way you must in CSS. Is when you get to JavaScript that you can start talking of down. But in CSS, if you have, let's say in my HTML, I have an element and I have a class inside of that element. I have ID inside of that element. I can choose to use any of those attributes to style it. So it doesn't matter whether I use the class, whether I use ID, but I choose to go any way at all. That's that's what I'm looking at is to get an end result. There's no that's why in developers, two developers can do the same time, but their approach is totally going to be different. Except maybe they copy each other. But if two developers are doing a work, the two that will end up presenting the same output. But if you look at their code, they are going to do two different things, especially when dealing with. Okay, so that's basically that. Hope I answered your question. All right.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So here I already have some properties.css which I made before the class, and this is the screenshot I have. So the person that was asking for screenshots, so this is it. So here I'm going to explain this, but I already did. So I already did. So what I'm going to do is now to link this properties.css to my HTML. But first of all, let me explain further. The box here and color red that I have. This this dot box one that I have here is, if you were here a few minutes ago, you know that this is a class. This is the dot box is we are using the class selector, right? So we're using the class selector, and for text, we're using the class selector as well. For dot container selector, so basically everything that we have as selectors here, we are using the class selectors, right? So, but that's what we've done. So what we're looking at now is the properties, which is one of it is color. And a way of picking color is by using the name value. So we have the name here, and the name here is red. Then we have the hex code. So this hex code now, this is the value that we have. You can see the color that we have there. You can see the color. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a name. It's just a combination of different hexadecimal digits that gives us a column that we end up working on it, right? So that's basically what happens. Then we have RGB. RGB here, yeah, I'm coming. RGB here, it's also the combination of different degrees of red, green, and blue that gives us this. We're going to see these colors in in its outputs. Okay, someone wanted to ask a question. Okay, let me go ahead. Yeah, John. John.
Yeah, good evening. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
All right. Okay, well, I just wanted to ask that, okay, for example, what if I have, like, you have a dot box, you have box one, then you have box two, and you have box three. What if I wanted to, like, I have box one, but there are different things in box one that I want different things to, I want a particular things to work for it. And there are also some other things in the box one that I want other things to work for, but I don't want it to work for the whole box. Is it possible? Is there anything someone can do about that?
Come again. I didn't get your question. Please
And I
come
don't
again.
want to start giving all of them. You don't get my question.
No, I didn't. The line broke. So come again, please.
I said, what if I have a different segment of things? Like I created something like I give it a class of box one. I also have other boxes like box two, box three, box four. But in my box one, I have 2 to 3 different segments of things inside the box. I wanted to, style one part of it. Like I want the general style to be for everything, and I also want some part of it not to have the style. Is this still possible, or I will have to pick it out one after the other and remove it and put all of them in a class?
Okay. Basically, you can do the first option that you talked about. You can apply a general style. A You can apply a general style to a lot of items. So for instance, let's say we have this box one, box two, box three. I want these boxes to have a border. So let me do that. Let me say a div. Let's say a div here. So the div here, we're going to have them as ones and So I'm going to have div. So we'll have div, and what div does for us is so div, and I'm going to have class and box one. Um, So we want to apply a border to these three divs so that the three divs can look like boxes for us, right? So I'm going to link my style here. First of all, I'm going to remove this and put these properties to CSS. So yeah, comment all this. So when I have these three boxes and I want to give these three boxes a general style without picking each of it one after the other. So what I can do is I can change the styling that I want to do, which is I can let me do it up here. So I can do dot box one, comma, dot box two, comma, dot box three. And any style that I put here should affect the three boxes. So if I come now and I say border, and width and height. Okay, so let's see. So you can say margin. Okay, now you can say I have, let me reduce this too much. It's 100. So okay, you can see now the three boxes. I changed the three boxes together and gave them a general style so that each of them have the same unique style for each of them. Then if I now want to now give each box a unique style on its own, that's why I can have my say box one, color, red. Hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you. I get it.
All right. Okay, so we've done so for box one, box two, box three, we have our color, which tells us that this is red. So color here, what color does is color is talking about the element itself, more like the text that you're going to be seeing in that box, right? But if you want to give color to this box itself, you're going to go with background color. You're not going to go with color. So when you're going with color, you're telling or you're dealing with the color of maybe text that's going to apply on that element, right? So when I come here and I say background color, that's when this box one now is going to have a, so you see the color here changes, right? So if I come here and I do the same thing, background color, use, let me use the same color around here. So now both the background color. Okay. All right, so I now have three different color for three different boxes. Although above I gave the same style for them. All right. So that's for that on colors. Then background color. Now we treated colors and background color. That's for properties. Then we have font styling. So font styling here, we are going to be able to modify. I'm not seeing your screen. Please, if you can see my screen, can you give a reaction? Let's know it from my end. Okay, please, the person that is not seeing my screen, could you um, leave the call and join again? Why are you putting dot before the box? Okay, we are putting the dot before the box so that we, when we created in our HTML code, we created three divs, and the three divs we created, we gave it an attribute of class. The class, we use class equal to box one, class equal to box two, class equals to box three. And for we to be able to style these divs using the class attribute, we are going to reference or pick them using dot, the name of the class. initially we could have done div. If we want to pick them using the div, we are only going to use div alone and style, right? But since we are working with class, class, we are going to put dots before. So the dot before there is saying that, okay, this is class we're working with. But when we're working with ID, we put hashtag saying this is an ID you're working with. All right. So, okay. So going forward, we're going to look at text. So I'm going to create an element here. Let me call it a paragraph and say, this is the text element. All right, so I'm going to inside here because it's a class that we are working with, and the name of the class is text, right? So, yeah, the styles are already applied, but let me comment them out and show you what happens. So this is how our text will look like when we create it new. So let me zoom in. When we create it new, this is how our text will look like. But when we start affecting, when we come here, we want to select the text by using the the class selector, right? The class selector that we have, that's what we are using to select the text. We are not using the element itself to select the text. We are using the class itself. So we use class, and the class here is the text to select the elements. So when we select that, and I want to style. So we open the curly braces and then font family. We are changing, if I uncomment this now, you see that the font family changes. Initially, this is how the font looks like if you watch my screen. But when I change the font family, you see that it changes. Then let me change this to cursive. Okay, it doesn't change. Maybe, I don't know. All right, so the font family changes immediately I have this. Then changing the font weight. So the font family is there to change the font to the type of font that you want. When you're working with brand, there's some brand that will tell you, okay, I want my font to be slanty. I want it to be like I want the font to be like a fanciful stuff. I need it to be Gen Z like. I need it to be look like this. I want it to look like this and all this stuff. So they will give you the description of how they want their brand logo, their brand text, the websites or whatever to look like. So we are now want to look like, okay, what's the name of this font? How do I connect it to this and all those stuff, right? So that's for font family. Then for font size, you are altering the initial font, the size of the font that the font came with, right? So yeah, a minute. So we are altering the size of the font by saying, okay, I am either going to increase the font or reduce it by specifying a number of pixels that I want the font to look. Then font weight. Font weight, we are saying, do we want this font to be, do we want the font to be light or do we want it to be bold? So that's basically what happens there. And font style, like I said, you can choose to make it italic, you can choose to make it underscore, right? Underline. Um, so we have, okay, oblate, okay, italic, but we have underline and all those stuff. So basically, let's take italics. Okay, yeah, someone have a question? Go ahead.
Okay, sir. I wanted to ask if, for instance, a brand gives you a particular font to use, and you don't have that font on your system, how do you install it to your system and run it on the VS Code?
Okay, okay. All right. So if you are working for a brand and they ask you to use a certain font and you don't have it, first of all, you have Google Fonts. So when you go to Google Fonts, you are going to see a whole lot of fonts. And when you go to Google Fonts is simply going to give you the direction on how to add those fonts to your application that you're working. Right? So these are a whole lot of fonts that you can see here. So Google will give, you can pick any type of font that you want from here, right? So And if you click on anyone, you are going to see the guide on how to put it to your application. Most of it is going to be that you are going to copy the link. When you click on get fonts, you are going to get embedded code. And when you get embedded code, what you are going to basically do is now see what happens here. You have embedded code where you are going to copy this, and who can tell us where this is going to be in our file or in our application? We treated this on Monday while I was explaining, and I even did it today. So who can tell us? You can comment on the chat box rather. You can comment on the chat box. I think you can see my screen. So this is the name of the font. Let's say this is the font we want to work with now. So if we want our application, where are we going to add this link? Head tag. Any other person? Any other person? Joel said head tag. Any other person? Keep it coming. Keep it coming. Head tag inside our CSS. Any other person? Font family in line with the text. Any other person? Any other person? Okay. Head tag. All right. Okay, so we are going to copy this link and put it inside of our head tag, right? So we put it inside of our head tag. So go to your HTML file, and inside of the head, you put it inside of the head tag. So when you put it here, you will simply see the guide on how to use it. So you've imported more. What we have here is more like importing the style now. So you've imported it. So to now use it, we have to use it, we have font family. So the font family we have there is dancing script. So the name of the font family is dancing script cursive. So to now use it, you are going to specify that the font family you want to use is dancing script. So let's see if this works. So I'm going to go back to my CSS and change this to dancing script. Where is it? Text font family, change this to dancing script. Yeah, so we see that. All right, so we import, you go to Google Font, select the font that you want. The easiest way to go about it is just copy the link URL, attach it to your index.html file, and then look at the font family that was used below that link you copy, and copy it and use as your font family, and boom, you have everything working for you, right? Okay, hope I answered the question.
Yes, sir.
All right, awesome. Okay, so going downwards, we have container, we have width, and we have height. So width and height enables us to alter the width, that's the side width and the upward and downward size of an element, right? So when I first created this, our box, they were too much. So I figured out that, okay, this can't really be that big. How do you make those spots to, okay, yeah, that's what I'm explaining now. So when I created them, they were too big, so I said no, if I go with the sizes that I initially specified, it's going to be big. So what I did was I had to reduce their width and their size and their height rather. So the width is this horizontal axis. So the width is the horizontal axis, while the height is the vertical axis of the element. So when you increase the width, so I'm going to create a new box below this text, and I'm going to call it container. Like I'm going to call the class name container. So over here, I'm going to call this. I'm going to make this a div so that I can have some gap. So div, and the class name I'm going to have there is container, because I already have container used here, and the container was used or called by called as a class. That's why I give it a class name so that I won't waste time. So if I come in, I don't have any of this. So you can't see anything here, but if I give it a background color now, you can see that if I give this a background color, you can now see the color of this. So this is the container that we have. So what we're interested in looking at is not the background color. What we're interested in is the width and the height. So the width and the height we use in altering how big the element is going to look. So if I change the width, so let's say 30 pixel, you can see it shrinks. It shrinks. The height doesn't shrink because I didn't alter the height, but the width shrinks, right? So if I give it maybe 100, 130, it grows a bit. Then if I alter the height, let's say to 75, right? So I'm going to have this. So you use the width and the height to alter the height and the size of an element, all right? So depending on what you want to do, you use the width and the height to alter that, right? So I basically use the background color to specify to give the elements a color so that you see the changes that we are making, all right? So now let's look at, I think I answered the question that asks, how do you make those balls to be those sizes? Did that answer the question, please? John Paul, did I answer your question? Okay, all right. Okay, so we look at margin and padding. So we're still going to come to that, but let me try to do the much I can now. So margin is, can you explain the div tag? Okay, yeah, I'm coming to that. So margin and padding are gaps, like spaces that we give to an element. So let's say back to my index.html. The div tag here is basically an HTML element that we have is an HTML element that serves as um, a house. Let me use the word as a house. We use it to wrap other elements. Okay, so it's more like a fence. Yeah, let me use the word fence. It's not like a fence, a barricade that you use it holding other elements intact, right? So use a div more like a fence to hold other elements intact. So and it doesn't really do much. It's just you when you put a div, when you put a div now, other elements are now going to be inside of it, and everything, any style you affect on this div is going to sort of be the parent style that is going to govern or going to apply. Not really is going to apply on other elements that is inside this div, but other elements that is going to be inside this div is going to be um, attached to that style that this div is going to have. For instance, if we give this div a width, the elements inside of it cannot exceed that width that this div is having. It's not like saying you've created a fence and then you are building an estate. Your fence, the width or the size of your fence is, let's say, maybe 2 acres of land. So when you start building an estate, you're not going to build more than 2 acres. You're not even going to build up to 2 acres because the fence just takes up the 2 acres, right? It covers the 2 acres. So you're not going to build up to 2 acres. That's basically what happens there. So the style is that you are going to have there is going to be corresponding or is going to be working in line with the elements that you are going to have inside the div. So that's how the div works. It's just like a fence. Okay, so I was trying to explain what is that again? Okay, I was trying to explain margin and padding. So I said margin, so still using div, margin as margin and padding are spaces that we give to an element to make it to have some gap between itself and other elements. So let's differentiate the two. We have margin. So what margin does is margin gives gap, gives gap, give space, let's use space, give space between an element and its neighbor, and its neighbor, right? So let's say I have these two paragraphs here. Let's say this one. I have this one, and I have P. I have two. And if I come now and I style if I come now and I style one to have a margin of, I'm not going to style because of time. I have one and I style it to have a margin of 3 pixels. What happens is this one that I style to have 3 pixels is going to give a gap that two should not be closer to one. Right? So margin gives gap. Let me put this up here. So margin gives gap, right? Margin gives gap between an element and its neighbor. So the neighbor of this one is 2. So the gap is creating a gap. It's going to create a gap between 1 and 2 and say, okay, I want it to be 3, let's say 3 centimeters away. I don't know, centimeter. Let's say 3 pixels away. Yeah, 3 pixels away from element 1. Element 2, stay away from element 1, right? But when we are looking at padding, so let's do padding. So what padding does is padding gives gap or space between an element and its border. So border here is how will I put it? Border here is more like the clothes. Okay, let's use a human being for instance. So a human being. Okay, let's go with two people walking side by side. So the first individual, let's say this first individual is Amaka. The second one is Glory. So Amaka now will have, when Amaka takes in a margin, is going to have some gap between Glory, right? So the margin separates Amaka from Glory. But when Amaka takes a padding, what happens is there's going to be some gap between Amaka and the clothes that Amaka is wearing, right? So there is going to be some gap between Amaka and its surrounding container. Not really its neighbor now, but its surrounding container. So the clothes there is going to be more like, okay, I want it to give me more gap, right? Yeah, but not its neighbor. Okay, so that's basically what happens. So we're probably going to see that, and I think we should do that now. So I'm going to have 1 and 2, right? I have 1 and 2. So I'm going to give these classes and say this is class 1 and this is class 2, right? So if I come to my properties, if I come to my CSS here and I style this and say 1, remember I'm using .1 because it was class that I used. So, and I use let me give border so that you can see the effect of margin and padding. So I have solid and 2. Okay, let me reduce the width of this. Okay. Okay, width contain. All right. Okay, so the same thing with, okay, let me give a command just put to, because I'm chaining two stuffs. All right, so currently now, I just give border so that you can see the difference. So if I come down here now and I do .1 and give it a margin, and say my margin is 10 pixels. Just watch this gap, watch the current gap here. Then if I say, you see that the gap, okay, is not visible because I think they have a layout issue here. So let me try increasing it to 50. Let's see. Yeah, you can see the gap now increases. The gap increases because I'm saying, okay, I need it to be a bit far from this other guy, right? So if I come to 2, if I come to 2 and give padding, Now, first of all, I want you to look at two, the border and the element TW inside of two doesn't have much gap. But if I put padding, let's say 10 pixels, we are going to see that the gap there is going to increase. Please, if you can still see my screen, can I get a thumbs up, please, so I know I'm not alone? Okay. All right. So fine. All right. So I have the gap between the CWO and the border now increases. That's the work of padding. While matching separates the elements, right? Okay. So that's for that. And okay. Then lastly, I'm just rushing so that we can finish the slide if not of anything. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at is border. I know I've been using border for the while. So some people were asking, what does this mean? What does this mean? So border here, border is the line that you can see that circles or that goes down this TW or even the one that you have. So that's our border that we have, right? So we want to know the value that this border takes. First of all, the first value you are going to see here is the border weight. The weight here is saying, is this when we say 2 pixel, 2 pixel can um 2 pixel means increase the size of the border, right? Increase the size of the border. Then we have the type of the border. Solid here means a straight line. We have different types of border. We have dotted, we have groove, we have dash. So when you have dotted, you're going to have just dot, 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 and it goes round, right? So you have dotted, you have dash. So dash is going to be like a dash spot. And then we have the color of the border, right? So we have the color of the border. So this is what happens. So we specify the weight. It's going to be thin, it's going to be huge, and all that. Solid, which means a straight line border. You can choose to give it a dotted, a dash, and all that. Then the color of the border that we want to use. Then we have border radius. So border radius is how curved you want this border to be. So I'm going to change this to 2 because of time. I don't have much time. I don't want to start creating other elements. I'm going to change this to 2. So change this to so that you see how it's going to look like. Okay, so if you watch, the border for 1 is more lighter than that of 2, right? Because here we specify the border here to be 1 pixel, but for here we specify it to be 2 pixels. So that of 2 is going to be more thicker than that of 1. Then solid, then we specify the color here. Then border radius is we're saying how curved is this border going to be. That's why we have something like this. So the border radius there tells us to curve our border for us. 50% there is telling us give us an oval shaped border. So when you don't have 50%, you can have something like 4 pixel, 5 pixel. What it does, it doesn't, instead of giving you a sharp edge border, it gives you a curved shape border, right? That's basically what happens. So you can have something like this, 5 pixel. So this is what it looks like if you have 5 pixel. But when you have 50%, you're going to have a round stuff. Okay, so we have background image, but I'm going to skip this. Let me check my slide and see what we'll have next. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, we still have a lot. Okay, I'm going to skip background image and okay, we've already talked about this. Okay, I'm going to skip background image. I will share the slide later so that we can go through it. So I'm going to go to the next thing, which is box model. So our box model, it's just we now bringing in the content that we have with now acknowledging our border, our margin, and our padding, right? Understanding how the thing works. We've already seen it and the basics. So box model is trying to yield trying for you to now gain more understanding of how it works, right? So content we have there is two. So our content here is two, right? Then our padding is this white space you can see between our two and our border. Then the border is just this line that you can see. Then the margin is the gap between one and two. That's basically what happens there. And that's what box model is here to tell us. So um, the box model, it shows how space is structured from inside, that is a content, to outward, to padding, to border and margin, all those stuff, right? So box sizing is more like a feature in box model. So box sizing controls whether width or height is included um, during padding and border, or is it excluded, or all those stuff. So, right. So we have border box and content box. I'm not really going to be doing this because as of now, we've already gotten the basic understanding of border, margin, and padding. So I'm not really going to be doing much of this. So we have display. Okay, I think we need to learn about this. So display, when we have different elements in our code base or in our application, how we see them on the browser matters, right? So how we see them on the browser.
So I think your
Something
mic is
clearly.
muted.
If you can see my screen, can I get it? If you can see me, if you can hear me clearly, can I get a thumbs up, please? Okay, okay, fine. I think it stopped a while ago. All right, thank you. Okay, so I have hello world. This is the second paragraph. Let me just make it short. All right. Then I have the third one. This is the third paragraph, right? Okay. So these three elements that I have there, each of it is taking the entire width of the page. What I mean by that is um, the hello world immediately is stop. The second sentence or word could have started immediately after it. And after that, the third one could have started immediately after the second one. But it doesn't do that because it has a display property that tells you that it's a block element. And what a block element does is it takes the entire width, whether it's going to make use of it or not. It just takes it and it doesn't allow any other elements to come in to fill up that gap, right? So that's block elements. But when we are working with inline elements, what inline element does it? Inline element, when it takes the space that it needs, it allows other elements to take in that space. An example of block elements now is an example of block elements is paragraph, heading, like H1 to H6. Yeah. So paragraph H1 to H6, those are block elements, right? Then an example of inline elements, right? So inline elements, you can have span. So span, let me say I have span here. I say this is the first span. Then after this, I'll create another span and say this is, so let me give a gap and say this is the second span. This is the second span. Then after that, create another span and say, and this is the last span. All right. So if I save this and go to my browser, we can see that everything just follows the first. This is my first span is here. After that, this is my second span is here. After that, and this is the last span. So after each element finish taking up each required gap or position, it allows for other elements to come in to take each position. All right. So that's basically what happens. But we can use CSS to alter all these stuffs. Remember, we can use CSS to alter these stuffs. So in the sense that we can now come here and say, for all these paragraphs that we have there, we change all of them to inline elements. So we can, I'm going to select the paragraphs and come here and say paragraph. I'm just picking the paragraph because of time. So I'll say display. So the display properties, I'm going to make them inline so that all the paragraph is going to, after hello world, we'll have this is the second paragraph, this is the third paragraph. So if I save, I'm going to see it. Okay, yeah. So it's a bit somehow, so let me add a line break. All right. Okay. So yeah, so I have hello world. This is the second paragraph. This is the third paragraph. So they I've used CSS now to alter how this element is displayed, right? So I can equally use CSS to alter how this inline element is displayed. So I can come to my CSS and do span. I'm picking the elements, so I can say display, make it a block element, so that this is the first span, this is the second span, and this is the last span. So where we mostly use these two display attributes I use now is when we are building our navigation bar, right? When you make your navigation bar, this is how your navigation bar is mostly going to look like. So I'm going to have my nav here, and I'm going to have my UL and have my align. So let me just make 3 navigation bars, say home, about, and contact, right? So if I open this is how it's going to look like. On a normal note, on a mobile device, this is okay. I'm just giving the outlook, like more like the layout of how it's going to look like. This is okay on mobile device. When we are working with desktop device, you want the elements to be, the buttons should be home, about, and contact. You don't want it to be this way. So you can then use your, let me use, I'm rushing, so I'm not going to be doing most of the styling externally. I might be doing them inline. So I will do, okay, let me do it. Let me do a class and nav, right? Let me do it. So I will have my nav here and the nav line. Now, yeah, nav airline. Then I'm going to have my display to be block, no, to be inline, right? So I have home, about, contact. If I can give some border, and say 1 pixel solid. Um, so padding, padding, 3 pixel, right? So border radius 1 pixel. Okay, so we have more like a simple navigation here that we can use on our desktop view applications. All right. So that's basically for um, layout. So when we are altering how things are being laid out in our application, we have two basic ways we can go with. Um, we can go with block layout, or we can go with inline layout, right? So I want us to look more on more on Okay, a minute, please. Let me join back. That's all. That's all. Okay, please, if you can hear me, can I get a reaction? I know I've not joined with my system to share my screen. If you can hear me, okay. I'm having network issues over here now. That's why I'm logged out from my system. A minute. Okay. By the way, what I wanted to say, the last thing I wanted to talk about was um, positioning, which enables our elements to be at different locations based on how we position them, based on how we locate them. Currently, I'm not being able to join back because of the network over here, and no, it's not working. I think I might have to stop here. I will be open to I'm in the community. I'll be open to questions that you will have regarding any part of the class that we need clarifications on, and I will equally be sending the um I'll be sending the outlined to the community as well. Sorry for the glitches and all that. So please, that will be the end for today. Please, I can't join back again. The network is terrible here. Yeah. So if you have any questions, you can ask on the community. I'll be open to answer you. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone.